From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Adding up the damage, what drought, winds, and fires have cost ranchers in the Texas Panhandle. Could the tariffs be coming off of China? The latest on what the White House is saying right now. And big market moves following the latest supply and demand report from USDA.
So the trade was caught off guard today.
USDA making a major revision to its corn forecast right now on AgDay. Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. As planting kicks into high gear, we get a better idea of what USDA thinks yields could be as those crops go into the ground. The department releasing its first official balance sheets for this year's harvest, and the news sent corn, soybeans, and wheat and cotton all higher. Now let's start with those yield predictions. In wheat, forecasters calling for 46.6 bushels per acre and 2.5 bushels less than what was predicted at the Ag Outlook Forum in February, but still up from last year. That has production 83 million bushels higher than a year ago due to better yields, offsetting a decrease in harvested area. That said, abandonment for winter wheat is the highest since 2002, with the highest levels in Texas and Oklahoma.
The USDA, noted the dryness in the Southern Plains because the hard red wheat number today was a big miss by the trade. The hard red wheat crop came in at 590. The average trade guess was 685 million bushels, so we missed it by 95 million bushel.
Now that was one surprise. Here's the other. Corn in at 177 bushels an acre. That's down 4 bushels per acre from the Outlook Forum. Production coming in at 14.5 billion bushels, down more than 4% from last year. Now, USDA is saying the very slow start to planting in the major corn producing states factored into the yield drop decision.
USDA's number of 177 is probably closer to reality, so let's just leave it there. Usually they'd come out with trend and then they have 8 reports to revise it down. This year they've pegged it what probably is reasonable to assume at this point in time, but what's not reasonable to assume, most likely if we look at it, is the acreage report at 89.5. Are we going to be able to get all those acres planted? Most likely not.
As for soybeans, they're sticking with their prediction of 51.5 bushels an acre, but calling for the crop to be 5% bigger from last year's. And cotton, a big market mover on Thursday. After the report came out, the agency expecting abandonment to more than double this year. Production forecast at 16.5 million bales. That's based on 12.2 million planted acres from the March prospective plantings report. But harvested area is expected to fall 1.1 million acres to 9.1 due to drought in the Southwest. It also says exports are expected to fall slightly. So where does this all leave stocks? USDA projecting wheat stocks will be 6% lower than last year at 619 million bushels, the lowest level in 9 years. For corn, U.S. exports are expected to decline 4%. And with the corn supply falling more than use, ending stocks are forecast down 80 million bushels from last year. As for soybeans, ending stocks projected to be 310 million bushels. That's up 75 million from last year's revised forecast. Meanwhile, the agency's estimate for world ending stocks of new wheat came in well below what the trade expected, while corn and soybeans were above.
Even when we look at the world corn numbers for the old crop 21, 2022, a strong increase in corn on hand when the trade in the market was expected to see a revision downward. Specifically, when we look at some of these different categories, USDA kept their Brazil number at 116 million metric tons. The trade was expecting something closer to 114 million metric tons, and that's well above what we're hearing from private estimates out of Brazil as well. So I think, when you take that into account and you take some of the demand changes that were made in both new crop and then the lack of changes really in the old crop numbers for corn, rather a bearish report on demand side.
Taking a world view and how much more the Russian invasion of Ukraine would factor into old crop grain and oilseed numbers, along with new crop assumptions for both countries, USDA is predicting a total 550 million bushel drop in corn exports from Ukraine due to Russia's invasion. It's also predicting a 54% drop in plantings. As for wheat, is forecasting at more than 21 million tons. That's 11.5 million lower than last year, and production is down 35%.
The shift from the Ukraine, they're going to go from exporting 23 million metric tons to USDA assessed, and this is of course a guess, 9 million tons for next year. That is a 14 million ton decline in supply. That supply is going to have to come from other people, the US, the Brazilians, the Argentines. That's the only place they're going to be able to find that kind of corn. And so, we either have to see total demand rationing, which is what at this point USDA is saying, or we're going to have to see that demand find another source than the Ukraine Black Sea market.
As we see the world try to react to this, what we're now starting to call a global food crisis, does that put even more pressure on our prices to move higher? Or do we see a scenario like, especially in the case of soybeans, to where additional acres or any changes to crop insurance or incentives to plant double crop acres, really ramping up soybean acres and pushing down price, I think starts to become an uncertain factor that we just don't know.
We'll have much more reaction to the report coming up in analysis, and you can take a deeper dive into the numbers on our website at agweb.com. Happening today, U.S. Ag Secretary Tom Vilsack is in Europe to take part in a G7 Ag Summit in Germany. From there, he will travel to Poland. Now, the ag leaders talking about the food security challenges caused by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Ahead of the trip, the Ag Secretary spoke before the Senate Ag Appropriations Subcommittee about the 2023 budget for USDA. During the hearing, he touched on the subject of Ukraine.
We've got an immediate global food security challenge by virtue of the disruption that the invasion has caused and the impact it's going to have on potentially unstable conditions in the Middle East and North Africa because of food shortages. So we need to address that, and that's one of the reasons why we tapped the Bill Emerson Trust. Part of the challenge there isn't just tapping the trust, but making sure that it's replenished, which I think is important, and the supplemental appropriations bill that you're considering would begin that process.
The additional aid was passed earlier this week by the House. It's now in the hands of the Senate. All that moisture we've seen is starting to chip away at the drought conditions. Meteorologist Matt Yurisovic takes a closer look. Matt?
Yeah, that's right, Clinton, and we've got some improvements, especially in the northern plains and the upper Midwest. We take a look at that drought monitor right now, and you can really see where those improvements are in the Dakotas. Even parts of Montana that were in extreme to exceptional drought have now been downgraded a little bit. Drought still persisting, though, in parts of the Pacific Northwest, even though we are seeing some relief from that drought, and we'll continue to see that over the next couple of weeks. Still dry, though, in parts of Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and parts of Nevada and that San Joaquin Valley as well. So taking a look here at the precipitation over the next 10 days, continuing to kind of look out west, we see a lot of precipitation, northern Rockies, even parts of Wyoming and Utah, and then most of it, again, going on in the east, where we still have a few abnormally dry spots that will likely be helped as all of this moisture moves through over the next week and a half. And as we head through Sunday, very zonal patterns, cooler up to the north, the jet stream up there as well. That's what keeps it unsettled. Warm out in the east and very hot and dry back in the west, continuing with those fire dangers that we've seen over the last couple of weeks. And we're starting to see more signs of planting finally getting into full swing. Stephen Burback sharing this photo a few days ago saying that the soybeans were ready to go in the ground in Kimball, Nebraska. I'll have more on your forecast coming up.
All right, thanks, Matt. The Biden administration says it's taking a hard look at the trade tariffs on China. The president confirming that on Tuesday. He was asked by a reporter if the tariffs imposed under the Trump administration might be dropped as a way to battle inflation. The president saying that, quote, "We're discussing that right now. We're looking at what would have the most positive impact," end quote. The administration eased some tariffs in March, but left them in place on some $350 billion worth of Chinese goods. In turn, China still has retaliatory tariffs on some ag products and American-made goods. Consumers, they continue to face inflation. That's at a 40-year high. Wednesday, the Consumer Price Index came in 8.3% higher in April compared to the previous year. COVID lockdowns aren't getting better in China. Reuters reporting things are getting more strict in Shanghai and Beijing as the country tightened measures on Monday. It reports officials in Shanghai, which is enduring its 6th week of lockdown, have launched a new push to end infections outside quarantine zones by late May. That's fueling public angst and raising questions about the legality of these latest moves to battle the virus. Now in Beijing, an area in the southwest of the capital, on Monday forbade residents from leaving their neighborhoods and ordered all activities not related to virus prevention to stop. More from that USDA report and where we go from here coming up next. And later, a food company makes a big donation to help research the future of dairy. Details in the country.
Find farm equipment on Machinery Pete's May 17th online auction. No reserve, no buyer fees. Start bidding now at auctions.machinerypete.com.
Tractor sales in the U.S. dropped last month. That's according to the Association of Equipment Manufacturers' monthly flash report. Sales of all tractors fell 22% from the same month last year. Now, it reports in April more than 31,000 tractors were sold, which compares to more than 40,000 sold during the same time last year. For the month, two-wheel drive smaller tractors were down 25% from last year, while four-wheel drive tractors were down 21%. For the year so far, two-wheel drive under 40 horsepower, they're down 17%, and four-wheel drive tractors are down 8%. Combine sales, they were down 15% in the month. Garrett Toy with Ag Trader Talk joining us once again. And Garrett, as we look at this report out from USDA and we start to think, okay, so where does this take us through the rest of May and into June? What are the big keys for you here that you'll be keeping an eye on? Obviously, planting the big one.
Sure, planting pace is going to be the key thing, and just the last week to 10 days, obviously, you know, the trend in greens has been higher, but we get these macro headwinds with the negative GDP number, the interest rate increase, and these macro sell-offs, I believe, are opportunities for the end user to extend coverage, or at least that's their perception of things. You know, we did have another flash sale of corn to China this morning. But the majority has been new crop, which has been the trend of the last two purchases. And if you consider the slow planting pace that we have out here, a lot of this length that is in the front end of the market, I think, is going to continue to move out to the December contract, because that's where the story is. And I think that when you watch these corn spreads in here, July SEP corn spread has become especially weak in here, that I think that especially the way the May-July has acted, I think a lot of this length is moving out to December, because just at face value, I mean, the new crop carryout is much tighter than the old crop carryout is at this point.
Yeah, talk to me about those carryouts that USDA came out with. Do you think those are close or the best projection that we have now?
I still think that I don't think the old crop carryout is going to increase. I just think that they kind of punted this week. I think the corn carryout can still increase, because at this pace, census exports suggest that U.S. corn exports are another 125 million bushel higher than where they are, because we're struggling with the cross-border exports to Canada. I think for the most part, though, I mean, the new crop estimates are, largely just a guess at this point. I do find it interesting that we cut feed and residual by 275 million bushel year over year, because I think that with these higher prices and increased crush, they're looking at record crush next year. I do believe that we're going to see. I don't think the number's close to true. So I think there is a little bit more room for upside adjustments in the new crop corn S&Ds. Beans, they did give us 99 million metric ton of China soybean imports, which are the same as their crush number. So those are rebounding, and record crush led by renewable diesel demand.
All right, appreciate it, Garrett. Thank you for being here. We'll be back with more Ag Day coming up in just a minute.
To contact Garrett, call him at 888-745-2020 or find him at agtradertalk.com.
Meteorologist Matt Yurosavik joining us here with our national forecast, starting with the root zone moisture map. And boy, this has changed a lot in the last few weeks.
It really has. We've seen a lot more moisture, parts of the upper Midwest and even the northern plains, even though we still have some very dry spots out there in the northern Rockies. And as we're heading out there today and this week, still dry back there in the southwest. We haven't seen a lot of rain. We have seen just a little bit. Some of the higher elevations, especially in parts of the Sierras, but San Joaquin Valley been pretty dry. Even parts of Texas still in that extreme to exceptional drought back there. Parts of New Mexico and Oklahoma. But if you're heading over to the east, we've still seen a surplus of moisture there in the Mississippi River Valley and tons of it over the last few weeks there in the upper Midwest from the Nebraska area up through the Dakotas and parts of Minnesota. So this has really changed a lot over the past few weeks and will continue to as we're expecting more rain in the north and in the eastern U.S. Here's a look at the severe weather risk today. Parts of St. Louis down toward Memphis, parts of Louisiana, and back toward central Texas in line for a few severe storms. And then doesn't really move that much, kind of a stalled out front here, producing some of those stronger storms as we head through the day on Saturday from parts of Wisconsin all the way down into parts of western Texas as well. So still going to be looking at a lot of that. And here is that front. It's not going to move a whole lot in the southern half of that. We've got the dry line still down there in parts of southern Texas. East, still got this storm system spinning over the east with clouds, some light rain showers. It's been nonstop there over the past few days and will continue as we head through Friday. Meanwhile, another storm system coming into the Pacific Northwest. That's going to be the first of a few over the next 10 days that's going to bring rain to the northern tier. And as that front eventually starts moving eastward, we still have a second front right on its heels back there. That's going to bring the chance for some storms as we head into Saturday evening. Still unsettled in the eastern U.S. So here's the precipitation as we head through the rest of this week, through the weekend, and into early Monday evening. You see a lot of that precip going on in the east. Not much back where we've got all of those extreme to exceptional drought conditions. And it's going to be very warm out ahead of this system as well. Very humid to the east and very dry air back to the west. Meanwhile, still getting up into the 80s and 90s. Phoenix could top out at 102 tomorrow afternoon. We'll keep an eye on the heat and the humidity as well as all that planting. That's a look around the country. Now let's take a look at the weather where you live. Rocky Mount, North Carolina, patchy fog and scattered showers, a high of 78 degrees. Clayton, New Mexico, sunny, warm, and very dry, a high of 80 degrees. And heading up to Libby, Montana, partly cloudy with a morning rain or snow shower as temperatures rise.
It's time to sign up for the 2022 United Pork Americas Conference in Orlando, Florida. Register today at unitedporkamericas.com and join us September 7th through the 9th.
Michigan officials have temporarily banned all poultry and waterfowl exhibitions amid the avian flu outbreak that's continuing to spread. It comes as the state announces its first case of highly pathogenic avian influenza in a commercial flock. A 35,000 bird turkey farm in Muskegon County was confirmed. The CDC says 37.5 million birds have been impacted by the outbreak, with cases now in 34 states. Wildfires in Texas caused an estimated $23.1 million in ag losses. That's the preliminary estimate from Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Services. Economists say the fires, which started in March in the Texas Panhandle and Coryell County areas, involved 433,000 acres. The losses include more than 400 livestock deaths, along with lost grazing values and fence repair costs. During a 7-day span alone in late March, fire officials responded to 192 wildfires. The flames fueled by dry, windy conditions throughout the winter season and into early spring. Coming up, a donation that could make a difference for the dairy industry in America. We'll tell you about a generous gift that could help dairy production down the road. With so much negative in the news lately between higher prices, delayed planning, and a war thousands of miles away impacting things here at home, we want to take a moment and talk about the positives and a company making a pretty big donation giving back to the community. The University of Idaho announcing yogurt maker Chobani is giving $1 million to a big dairy project going in at the university. Now the money will go to its Center for Agriculture, Food and Environment, or CAFE. It has plans to build a 2,000 cow research dairy and 640-acre demonstration farm. Once built, it will be the nation's largest research dairy. The university says it will help advance research to ensure a sustainable future for the U.S. dairy industry. Chobani's founder, Hamdi Ulukaya, says sustainability is part of the fabric of the company, adding that the dairy industry has a deep history of commitment to and leadership in sustainability, which must be honored. U of I says it will break ground on the first phase of the $22.5 million project next month, and it expects that first phase to be completed next year. And that's all the time we have this morning. I'm sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.